Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Alvarez. Welcome to the Audacy Live Lumineers record release party. I'm here with Wesley Schultz of the Lumineers. Hello.
Hey, how you doing, Nicole?
I feel like I've been lucky enough to see you a couple of times throughout this madness, and I've been lucky enough to hear a few of the songs. We're moments away from hearing songs that people love, but also songs off of Brightside. And we're at the very beginning of the album cycle. So how do you feel? Because it's not totally out there yet. How do you feel right now?
Yeah, about a third of it's out up until that record comes out. So I think there's a lot of um, anticipation, but it's a good feeling when you go into it. Like we just love this record we made, and it not like it's not in like a arrogant way, but we just really love what we were a part of, and that's also kind of unique to this album. I think in the past there was a lot more like self-consciousness, and this is a lot more, just actually getting goosebumps from our own music or shedding tears listening back to some of the mixes. So I'm really excited for people to hear it and hear a kind of different side of us.
So we live in a little bit of a different world. There's a lot going on right now. How much of that played into the writing of this album and these songs? Was what we are going through collectively any influence whatsoever?
Yeah, I think it has to be, unless you wrote the album, years and years ago. It infiltrates every part of, you know, sometimes your subconscious. So even in there's a song "Where We Are," that will come out the day the album obviously comes out, and that's a metaphor, a car crash. That's a sort of metaphor for us going through a car crash as not only a country but a world. Where the weirdest thing about getting in, it's about a real car wreck I was in, but the idea that everything's kind of going smoothly and everything changes in an instant, and then you're left picking up the pieces. And I think that's something we can all relate to, uh, you know, as of the last couple of years. And so the car wreck was kind of a perfect analogy for it. But yeah, it's like I feel I feel I feel hopeful, but I think we're all pretty hopeful. We just
Yeah.
it's sometimes a dangerous thing to hope because you don't want to be let down. But I think the album is expresses hope without being like ignoring the fact that there's all this pain and there is suffering and there's people out of jobs and there's just a lot of things that are not going well, to say the least. And to have people to feel hope regardless of that, it's the same reason why I think we all had, without realizing it, we had believed that it would all turn around about a year ago because
Yeah.
we're hopeful and we're still hopeful. And try not to slide too far into the cynicism.
Yeah. What's the first song that you wrote on this album? And did you take any sort of different emotional approach, or did you do anything different in the recording studio that you did with the past albums?
The first song we wrote was a song called Roller Coaster. And I'd say the first song we recorded was Brightside. And Brightside was very different in terms of like the approach because it was done in one day as opposed to, almost a week it usually takes us to finish the song. So I think there was much more of it was a breakneck speed to everything in a good way. There was less overthinking and more just like, let's let's let this rip. Let's just see what happens. And I think our instincts are okay. Let's do it. Instead of, oh, I don't know, is that good? Because sometimes that indecisiveness can lead to, just a compromise altogether. Instead of, you hear there's certain records and you might hear a mistake on it, like an errant clap or something happens that is sort of not perfect about it. But it's kind of like when you watch movies where there's a take that they keep, like in, it's a weird reference, but Dustin Hoffman in Midnight Cowboy, and he goes, "Hey, I'm walking here." I
Yeah.
guess that was just like he was walking in character. A taxi that wasn't just an extra almost hit him, and that's what he said. That wasn't in the script. And I
Okay.
feel like when things aren't in the script, they can become the most signature moments on albums and in movies. And so you have to be open to that, though. If the guy said cut, you would have
Yeah.
never got that. You would have never got that moment. That moment in cinema.
So you were a bit more unscripted, if anything.
Yeah, it was a lot more like improv than it was reading from a script.
I was thinking about when you came out, what Hohei was 2011.
Yeah, the album came out in 2012, but I think the song came out
Yeah.
2011.
It's interesting because when a band comes out and their first song is such a massive, massive hit, you could just be the band that wrote that massive hit. Were you ever scared that you'd be a one-hit wonder? And if so, would you have been okay with that?
I think that's definitely out of everyone's hands when that type of thing
Yeah.
happens. Like um, I think no one wants to be a one-hit wonder, but it's also something that like you can use that first song as a way to get your foot in the door to get people to listen to the other music. So honestly, it was like from day one. I remember playing shows and we would play that. I'd been to see another band that I really liked that they saved that their big hit from their first album and they were touring on that for the last song of the set. And
Yeah.
and there was a lot of tension throughout the whole set for that song to be played. And I remember we played Ho Hey since album one, like the third song in the set. It was kind of like in a way saying, some of you are here for this, but there's more to this and I want to show you. But you're going to be so distracted if I wait to play it. So let me get this out of the way. And it started to feel like eventually like a cover song because we spent a lot of time in bars playing other people's songs, and it's not that I don't feel attached to it, but it makes the rounds. It gets bigger than you could have imagined. All of a sudden it's almost like it's this part of the culture that like had this song for a moment, and you start feeling like you're playing someone else's music. Yeah. It's just an interesting thing. So I think the goal though was to, I grew up loving my dad listened to a lot of Billy Joel as an example, and you listen to his greatest hits and he's Piano Man for sure, but he's also Scenes from an Italian Restaurant and She's Always a Woman and countless other songs, Vienna. And I think you just have to write your way out of that problem. I think I think the other part of it is you don't necessarily need to go make another hit as big as whatever you think that was just a part of the zeitgeist, and you can't really control that.
Since the beginning, I've been such a huge fan. I've just been obsessed with the Lumineers since day one because you always deliver and you're always consistent. And there's an elegance to the way you deliver. It's honest. You speak and you sing with conviction. So if there's one thing that you keep for every record, if there's one thing that you go into the studio with Jeremiah and with whomever that is important for you as the common thread, what would that be?
In terms of like a mindset, or
yeah, in terms of a mindset, or in terms of like something you want to accomplish, like what's the secret sauce? Because you are so consistent in delivering, and each record has its own fingerprint. So when you go in there, is it a case of you just saying, I'm going to write about my life now, or I'm just going to write from my heart, or it's like the one thing that you do with every record?
I think part of it, we met Rick Rubin on our first album touring, and hero of ours, and he kind of dabbles in all types of music. And he was very fascinated by transcendence. He understood that there was certain music that no matter who you played it for, it resonated, it struck a chord, it just made sense. And I think that's when people talk about timeless music, there's viral clips now of people listening to older music and being like, the first time this guy's ever heard, and name the song. It could be like The Chain by Fleetwood Mac, or it could be like Enter Sandman or whatever. And you see these people's faces, the reaction.
Yeah.
That's transcendence. And I think in the same way, we're trying to make music that feels like timeless in that way. But most of the way we arrive at that is to try to give ourselves, like, it's like the goosebump test. Like if you're listening, we would literally turn to each other and go, look, goosebumps. Like
love that.
It was just like something that we kept checking in with, because you've heard it 20 times now and it's still moving you, sometimes to tears, sometimes to that feeling of chills. But that's mostly if it can pass the goosebump test. And I always thought like busking taught me a lot. Like if you believe the song you're singing, you're going to be a good busker. And if you don't, you're going to be really bad at it. And if you can play it for some kindergartners, or you can play it for some people like in a like an old folks home. Those are like the two poles of like,
Yeah.
they'll both tell you straight what they feel about it really quickly. Like kids will be like, this is boring, or
Yeah.
they'll be. So I think that's part of it too, is imagining playing it in a nursing home or playing it to kindergartners and getting the same reaction of like trying to get through all the other things in their life and just getting them to focus and connect with it. So it's not always like that simple, but you kind of have to base it on how you're feeling as you're
Yeah.
listening back and what it's doing to you.
I hear you. Well, Brightside definitely passes the goosebump test. Is there before we get into it, is there any one or two songs on the record that you want to spotlight for any reason, or do you just want people to find what they find for themselves?
I think they're gonna find whatever they find, are like, I would say the two songs that really, as I was making the record, struck me deeply were like Brightside and AM Radio were really obvious, like, oh wow, I love these songs, but the sort of unsung heroes of the record I think are Never Really Mine and Where We Are. Those are like a couple ones that when they come on, I think you'll hear something in them that's just a little bit different. Where We Are, I explained a little bit about being kind of rooted in this car wreck story that happened 10 years ago to me and my now wife, where we almost died in this car wreck, but that this idea of, you know, us being in a collective car wreck has this weird quality of a metaphor for the whole situation. And it made, to me, it was a way more of an interesting thing to sing about than I'm tired of looking at these four walls and wearing a mask. And it was like, there was something more poetic about it. And then with Never Really Mine, it started out as this, Jared told me later, it was something that his mom said to me about his brother, losing his brother. She said he was never really mine. And Jared's brother unfortunately died of an overdose. I was good friends with him growing up, and it's been a part of his life. His losing his brother has really defined him in some ways, and but I never knew that, and so he sent me this song, and I interpreted it my own way, which is the beautiful thing about music. And I wrote the verses about this couple that's sort of like tainted love. It's like you can't really, no matter how hard they try, it's destined to be this fiery ending. And I imagine this couple just like fighting so loud that the neighbors call the police, like that kind of loud, and they're like four doors down. That's how. So the song's meant to do that to a listener. And it also has Cindy Mizell singing on it, who sang with Bruce Springsteen and with the Stones. And it was kind of our version of rock and roll. Growing up in New Jersey, listening to Bruce, it was like, this is the Lumineers take on rock and roll, is like this song. So Never Really Mine's a good one too.
Well, Wesley, it's been a pleasure watching you guys start off small and then play bigger rooms and then arenas and stadiums and the live shows, and just watching your career unfold has been such a beautiful thing. And anytime you go to a Lumineers show, the engagement, I think, is what is my favorite. And it's going to be really great to sit back and watch people find their treasures on Brightside, because like I said, just talking about it, I have the goosebumps. Thank you, by the way. Thank you for always being so generous and for joining us.